Tangled is everything a Disney movie should be. It has an amazing plot, well-established characters, its own unique flair, catchy songs, and one of the greatest love stories not just in Disney, but in all of movies. Just my opinion. Released in 2010, Tangled was Disney's retelling of the classic fairy tale of Rapunzel, a young woman with very long blonde hair who lives in a tower and gets visited by a prince. However, I can't help but realise that as a huge fan of the Tangled franchise, Disney hasn't really utilised this IP as much as I would expect them to, especially compared to how much they milk so many of their other franchises such as Frozen and Moana. So today I'm going to be looking at the Tangled franchise in a vacuum, the past, the present, and the potential future. Interestingly enough, Walt Disney had actually been planning an adaptation of the classic story of Rapunzel since the 1940s. However, Disney's initial idea for a Rapunzel movie never came to fruition because nobody was sure how to expand the story beyond her leaving the tower. Eventually, in the late 90s, Disney decided to give this concept another try, but again, they just weren't sure how. Until one day, Michael Eisner pitched a modern reimagining of the tale, set in San Francisco of all places. I am wondering whether this book I found in W.H. Smith took inspiration from this idea. Not that I've read it. Anyway, the original plot of this very not even close to the final product version of Tangled was all about Claire and Vince, two teenagers who are transported into the fairy tale world of Rapunzel and not Flynn Rider, who are eventually both turned into a squirrel and a dog. It was even said that OG Glinda herself, Kristen Chenoweth, was supposed to play Rapunzel. That's right. In some alternate universe, the legends who originated the roles of Elphaba and Glinda on Broadway both play Disney princesses. But that doesn't matter too much, because another absolute musical legend, Mandy Moore, ended up getting cast as the lead in the reimagined version of the story of Rapunzel. The movie, originally titled Unbraided, was reimagined again because supervising animator Glenn Keane said that he believed there was a much more genuine and sincere message to get out of the original fairy tale. So they pushed back the release date a couple of years so they could fully realise the story that they wanted to go with. Mandy Moore was cast after the directors Brian Howard and Nathan Greeno auditioned hundreds of young women, including Idina Menzel, Kristen Bell, and Eden Espinosa. Bell and Menzel were of course eventually cast as Anna and Elsa respectively, and Espinosa would later on be cast as Rapunzel's best friend and lady-in-waiting Cassandra in Tangled series, which I'll come back to later. Around a year before the film's release date, after The Princess and the Frog didn't perform quite as well as Disney had hoped, the company made the creative choice to change the title of their upcoming movie from Rapunzel to Tangled. After this decision was made, Disney received a lot of dumb criticism, with one person even accusing the studio of sexism, claiming that they switched up the title as to not highlight the female star. What? Literally, they compared changing the title of a film that nobody had seen yet, and so nobody had yet seen how Flynn Rider is just as important to the story as Rapunzel is, to changing the title of The Little Mermaid to Beached. No! The Little Mermaid is Ariel's story, and yes, Eric is important to the story, but he's not quite Flynn Rider, is he? Despite several people criticising them, claiming that all this title-changing nonsense was just a marketing campaign, the directors used a much better comparison, saying, "You cannot call Toy Story Buzz Lightyear." Exactly. Tangled is the story of both Rapunzel and Flynn Rider, and so it deserves a title that gets that memo across. Funny thing about the development of Flynn's character, the character was designed based on what around 30 of the company's female employees said they found attractive in men. Yes, they had hot guy meetings, and some of this early concept art was clearly used later down the line for Kristoff's design in Frozen. Another interesting fact is that we were originally going to have a British Flynn Rider. The directors were only auditioning British guys until Zachary Levi came in, and they just decided to let him use his normal voice. With a final voice cast consisting of Mandy Moore, Zachary Levi, Donna Murphy, and a couple of other guys playing side characters, Tangled was finally released in theatres on November 24th, 2010, grossing $592.5 million on a budget of $260 million. Yep, Tangled was, at the time, one of, if not the most expensive movie ever made. This insane budget was due to all the production issues, plus the fact that they had to develop an entirely new animation software just to animate Rapunzel's hair. So now this is the part of the video where I give a quick summary of the the movie Tangled, which I'm assuming you've seen if you've watched this video, but in the rare case you're not, here's the plot. Once upon a time, a single drop of sunlight fell from the heavens. From this sun drop grew a beautiful golden flower with magical healing powers. Mother Gothel is a selfish bitch who won't share the flower despite the fact that it doesn't belong to her anyway, and she just used it to keep herself alive for hundreds of years. Meanwhile, in a kingdom called Corona, King Frederick and Queen Ariana are having a baby, but the queen is very sick. Gothel accidentally leaves the flower out in the open one night so that people find it and use it to heal the queen. The queen gives birth to Rapunzel, whose hair has inherited the Sundrop's healing magic, although they don't know that. Gothel does find this out after sneaking into the castle one night, and after finding out that the hair loses all of its magic once it's cut. So she steals Rapunzel and locks her in a hidden tower on the outskirts of the kingdom. For the next 18 years, Rapunzel lives in this tower with her pet chameleon Pascal, and she dreams of seeing the floating lanterns in person, which, little does she know, actually are being released by her parents on her birthday each year in the hope that she'll one day find her way home. On the day before her 18th birthday, Rapunzel asks Gothel if she can see the lights, and obviously Gothel says no because she's a gaslighting old hag. Gee, imagine if Gothel had her own kid that she abandoned. That would be crazy. Meanwhile, a guy called Flynn Rider is on the run because he stole the lost princess's tiara with the help of his friends, the Stabbingtons. Flynn betrays those bastards and narrowly escapes capture from a palace horse called Maximus, and he climbs up Rapunzel's tower, where she subsequently knocks him out with a frying pan. After convincing Gothel to leave her alone for a bit, Rapunzel bribes Flynn into taking her to see the lights the next day, to which he reluctantly agrees. Rapunzel leaves the tower for the first time ever, and she has a couple of existential crises. Flynn takes her to a pub called the Snuggly Duckling, where she actually manages to get them to open up and sing a song about dreams. They also help them escape the guards, and Rapunzel reveals the secret of her glowing hair to Flynn, and they nearly drown in a dark cave. After healing Flynn's wounded hand with her magic hair, Flynn tells Rapunzel that his real name is Eugene Fitzherbert. Mother Gothel is secretly conspiring with the Stabbingtons to get revenge on Eugene and manipulate Rapunzel into coming back to the tower, though Gothel's first attempt to do that is unsuccessful. Or was it? The next day, Rapunzel manages to convince Maximus the horse to help them, and eventually they make their way to the kingdom just in time for one of the most beautiful scenes in any movie ever. Eugene spots his old mates in the distance, so while he goes to take care of it, a bunch of Gothel's evil shenanigans happen and Rapunzel ends up back in the tower, while Eugene is sent away to be hanged. Yikes. Meanwhile, back in the tower, Rapunzel puts two and two together and realizes that she's the lost princess. Gasp. Maximus and the thugs from the pub earlier help get Eugene out of prison, and he makes his way to the tower, where Gothel immediately stabs him. Rapunzel makes a deal with her kidnapper where she agrees to go with her as long as she lets her heal Eugene, to which Gothel reluctantly agrees. Eugene doesn't want her to do this, however, so he cuts her hair, showing that he'd rather die than have Rapunzel be unhappy. After Gothel withers away back to hell, Rapunzel cries over Eugene's body, where she ends up healing with her tears. The gang head back to the castle so that Rapunzel can finally meet her real family, and they all lived happily ever after. The movie received mostly positive reviews, however that apparently wasn't enough to earn an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature, which is wild to me, even when considering everything else that came out in 2010. Although it did at least get a nomination for Best Original Song with I See the Light. I love this movie for many reasons, especially from a storytelling perspective. I love how Disney was able to adapt the story into something much more than a simple Rapunzel tale. The thing is, we would have been perfectly happy if Tangled was simply just a classic retelling of the fairy tale, but the effort and the creativity that went into crafting this expanded upon version of the narrative is what makes this movie so unique. For example, so many plot points from the original fable have proper, convincing reasons as to why they happened compared to how they could have easily have just said that these things exist because they said so. Like, the king doesn't steal the flower from the witch's garden because it doesn't belong to the witch in the first place. Why does Gothel want the baby? Because the baby's got magic hair that can keep her young forever. Why can't Rapunzel cut her hair? Because then her hair will lose all its magic. And the lore of this universe isn't overly complicated like it is in some of the franchises that will come after it. And they even left so much open to explore within this world in the future. Which brings us to the next part of the story. The years following the initial release of Tangled. 2 years after the release of Tangled, Disney released Tangled Ever After, a 6-minute short that played before the theatrical 3D re-release of Beauty and the Beast. The short follows the day of Rapunzel and Eugene's wedding, where Pascal and Maximus need to rescue the wedding rings before it's too late. It has the typical plot of a Disney spin-off short, and that's all it needed to be. It's quick, funny, and sweet. And it's also the end of the timeline within the universe of Tangled that we know of as of recording this. But of course, Tangled and Tangled Ever After are not the only canonical pieces of media within the franchise. Which brings me to March 10th, 2017, the Disney Channel release of Tangled Before Ever After. When I first saw the trailer for this movie on Disney Channel, I was very excited, but also very confused. I had a lot of questions, mainly, how did her hair grow back? And why is Gothel there? And the answers to those questions were both answered very swiftly in Tangled Before Ever After, which is just a big introduction to Tangled the series, which would air later on, and had already also been renewed for a second season at that point, before it even aired. Now, Before Ever After takes place between the events of the movie Tangled and Tangled Ever After. 6 months after Rapunzel returns home, it is the weekend of her coronation, and her father is understandably quite overprotective of his daughter. Although it seems that she's aware of this, Rapunzel still wants a lot more out of life, so her lady-in-waiting Cassandra, who I mentioned earlier, sneaks her out one night to the borders of the kingdom to the exact spot where the magic flower was found, only to find that there are now these mysterious black spiky rocks in its place. Rapunzel touches these rocks and they start chasing her until her magical golden hair grows back. Now you're probably thinking, why doesn't she just cut it off? Well, they get back to the castle and find that her hair is not only back, but is also indestructible. Eugene finds this out almost immediately, so he helps Rapunzel hide her hair under a very massive wig. Then a massive showdown happens at the coronation involving a bunch of criminals that want revenge. This whole thing is essentially just the pilot for the main series. There's not really anything else I really need to get into detail with right now, except for that it ends with Rapunzel admitting to her dad that she snuck out. Not with Cassandra, because of course she doesn't want her friend to get fired, and so he forbids her from leaving the borders of the kingdom forever. And then it ends with her singing the series' theme tune, Wind in My Hair. 2 weeks later, the main series started, and the first half of the season does contain a lot of filler episodes, but I don't mind it too much because, in my opinion, it helped develop the characters more, as well as showing how Rapunzel adapts to certain situations that she's never experienced before, and also just showing how she always manages to find the good in people. There are episodes like Rapunzel's Enemy, where she has to learn that not everyone is going to like her. There's also One Angry Princess, where she is determined to prove the innocence of Attila, one of the thugs from the Ugly Duck thing, who is accused of vandalism. And then we have episodes like Cassandra v Eugene, which follows the typical plot of 2 characters who hate each other, who are locked in a room together until they figure things out, but it also allows us to find out more about Cassandra and Eugene, and then it ends with a showdown. Actually, a lot of these episodes end with a hero versus villain showdown, but that's okay. A lot of people's main issues with season 1 are to do with the handling of Eugene's character, saying that it seems like they were trying to replace him with Cassandra, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with this point 100%, because I do agree that a lot of the focus, especially in the earlier episodes, are on developing Rapunzel's friendship with Cassandra, because I do see how sometimes Eugene is just discarded as the boyfriend whose feelings Rapunzel sometimes forgets to consider, but on the other hand, there are other episodes where the relationship is a key plot point, such as the return of Strongbow and Not in the Mood, and even when the focus isn't on him and Rapunzel, there are episodes like Fitzherbert P.I. and in like Flynn, where he's determined to show how much he's grown as a person since he met Rapunzel. However, unlike the movie, this series is mainly focused on Rapunzel and not Rapunzel and Eugene, which is kind of disappointing to me because the more I think about it, the more missed opportunities this series had. But one of the things I see when people make the argument about the handling of Eugene's character is that it seems like they were giving Eugene less screen time so that they could develop Cassandra, and I mean, maybe sometimes, but I do like that we get to know more about Cassandra because, yes, there are better ways they could have developed her character, and her relationship with Rapunzel didn't involve making Eugene seem less important at times. But I do think that in the end, us getting to know more about Cassandra while still having so many questions about her origins did contribute to the shock value that would come with the twist of the end of season 2. The episode Queen for a Day is where I'd say things properly start. Because, oh my god, how have I gotten this far without mentioning Varian? Varian, this sweet child, protect him at all costs. Varian is this young alchemist who Rapunzel and Cassandra meet in the first episode of the main series, What the Hair. He is voiced by Broadway royalty Jeremy Jordan, and he's just an amazing character. I didn't quite get the hype around him when I was 10, but now I see why there is so much fanfiction about him. Anyway, in this episode, Rapunzel does the unthinkable. She breaks a promise. This ancient demon called Xantiri sent a snowstorm to Corona, and Rapunzel has to solve that problem while Eugene is out saving her parents from an icy mountain. Varian's village is being taken over by these spiky rocks from the pilot, and while experimenting on them, he ends up trapping his dad in amber. This episode traumatized me as a kid, and since I didn't even do a full series binge until last year, I thought Varian's dad was fossilized forever. Varian's anger at Rapunzel caused him to go on a villain arc at the end of the season, which I actually think was really well executed compared to later on. because you can understand why he's upset. And also, this guy is 14 years old, parentless, and a mad scientist who's had everyone he's ever trusted turn their backs on him. So yeah, go ahead there and destroy the kingdom. Actually, he kidnaps the queen so that he can lure Rapunzel to his lab so that they can try to use what's left of the sun drop magic inside of her to free his dad, leading to probably the most well-known song in the series, which you probably heard in the animatic once or twice. Ready as I'll ever be. After the final boss fight, Varian is jailed and Rapunzel sets off on the journey to the Dark Kingdom to find out the secret of her hair. This is where Season 2 follows and where the series renames itself to Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure. I would say that Season 2 is my favourite season, despite the fact that Varian 1000% should have been in it. But nope, instead we get Shorty, who I have not mentioned thus far because I didn't want to. I mean, if you like Shorty in the movie, I'm sorry, but this series will absolutely ruin him for you. He was funny in the movie because he was in like 2 scenes. In the series, he is featured in 42 out of the 59 episodes. He is in more episodes than Lance Strongbow, a much more funny and interesting character. Anyway, the main characters of the season are Rapunzel, Eugene, Pascal, Maximus, Cassandra, Fidela, Lance, Shorty, and Hookfoot, who ditches them halfway to go on tour with his brother Hook Hand, the one who, wanted to be the piano player in the movie. When the season first aired, I only watched the 2-part premiere and the episode where they turn into birds before I either lost interest or lost access to Disney Channel, so pretty much everything in the series from this point on I experienced for the first time last year. This season does also contain some filler episodes, such as the aforementioned bird episode, but I mean, every TV show like this is going to have filler episodes, so I'm not going to mind too much in this case. The filler episodes do annoy me in Season 3, but that's a whole other story. I like how in this season, the group travels to different locations and spends about 3 or 4 episodes in said location. We have Vardaros, and we have this island run by these weird leaf people that remind me of the coconuts from Moana, and the most interesting place is the House of Yesterday's Tomorrow. Some of these settings definitely are more successful than others because we really didn't need to see Hookfoot fall in love with Mermaid, did we? However, my favourite episode in the entire series comes halfway through with Rapunzel and the Great Tree, because there's this awesome warrior lady called Adira who pops up at convenient times to rescue the gang when they get into trouble, and of course both Eugene and Cassandra don't trust her, very reasonably might I add, and she basically tells everyone about this incantation from the Moonstone which causes death. This makes complete sense within the world of Tangled because of course it's going to be the negative alternative to the magical healing power of a sun drop. And while Eugene and Lance are having an acid trip upstairs, Rapunzel nearly kills everyone with this magic moon incantation, which is one of the most famous and beautifully animated in the series. After Rapunzel's attempted murder, Cassandra obviously is super pissed at Adira because she believes that she wanted Rapunzel to drain the life out of her friends with this incantation. And again, Cassandra's anger is totally justified because this woman came out of nowhere and led them right to a death spell. Even though Cassandra is supposed to be her best friend, Rapunzel gets mad at her for not trusting Adira, which she does apologise for very shortly after, leading to Cassandra singing another one of the absolute top tier songs in this show, Waiting in the Wings. If I had to pinpoint it, I'd say that this is where Cassandra became my favourite new character along with Varian, and where I decided that I wanted to write fanfiction about her. Cassandra is such an interesting character to me because she is so polarising within the fandom. Some people would ride or die for her, and some people hate her, some people liked her at first and then didn't like her by the end of the show, and then there are some that didn't trust her at first, and then there's the people who ship her with Rapunzel, and then there's the people who ship all 3 of the main characters. Honestly, both of those I'm fine with, but what I'm not fine with is people who ship Cassandra with Varian. Like, huh? That's gross. Don't do that. Please don't do that. I'm sorry. Well, not really. But if you ship Cassandra and Varian, I do not trust you. You're probably a nice person, but I do not trust you, which is honestly how I felt about Cassandra in Season 1, but that's beside the point. You should not be shipping this child with an adult. Even if you age him up, it's still weird to me, because the character that you know Varian as is a child, and the character that you know Cassandra as is an adult. So therefore, it's not okay. Ship whoever you want, as long as it's legal, within the canon of the show. Okay, run over. Waiting in the Wings. This song is what got Alan Menken his EGOT, and I love how they clearly kept all of Cassandra's singing moments beforehand to be more timid when you take Eden Espinosa's singing capabilities into consideration, because this absolute goddess of a woman was the original understudy for Idina Menzel in the first Broadway production of Wicked, and she's also played Ava Perron in Evita, and Maureen in Rent, and Brooklyn in Brooklyn. And last year, she was Tony nominated for her role as Tamara de Lempicka in the very underrated and very misunderstood show Lempicka, which I really hope comes to the West End someday with Eden still in the main role. And apparently, this last high note is the same note that Elphaba needs to hit for the last bit of Defying Gravity. I actually think that Waiting in the Wings was my most listened to song of 2024, and I still listen to it regularly. After the song ends, this guy Hector starts fighting them, and Rapunzel uses the death spell again instead of listening to Cassandra, who tells her not to, since she just as easily could cut everyone loose with this sword thingy, but Rapunzel doesn't listen and nearly kills herself again. And when Cassandra tries to free her, she ends up getting her hand burnt up pretty bad. This causes Cassandra to put on some badass new armour, but it also puts a strain on her and Rapunzel's relationship from this point on the series. The season also explores one of the scrapped ideas from the original movie, Vigor the Visionary, the psychic monkey, which I think was overused. After Hookfoot goes off to live his dream with his brother, who, by the way, sings the worst song in the entire series in that episode. But after Hookfoot ditches them, Cassandra and Rapunzel's relationship is still a little rocky because of what happened at the Great Tree. And during the episode Rapunzel Day 1, Rapunzel's memory is erased, and we have a repeat of the scene where Rapunzel and Eugene met, but with Cassandra. At the end of this episode, Cassandra reassures Rapunzel that she will forgive her eventually, and that she just needs more time. Don't worry, she's definitely not one to hold on to grudges. Anyway, the penultimate stop on this journey to the Dark Kingdom is the House of Yesterday's Tomorrow, and everything goes haywire. Firstly, the gang gets attacked and replaced by these mirror demons. Then they get turned into kids, and then Rapunzel gets put into this hypersleep demonic simulation of her old life in Corona, which is powering this device is going to bring Xantiri, the demon that created the snowstorm in season 1, back to life. Meanwhile, Cassandra gets led into this mysterious door by a very suspicious voice that is calling her name, but we don't find out what happened there until season 3. And after Rapunzel eventually breaks free, Rapunzel and Eugene reunite with a monkey who actually turns out to be Demanithus. This ancient leader, well, he poses as the monkey for about an hour so that they can retrieve part of the incantation scroll, and he also leaves Eugene with this very ominous message. In the season finale, we find out that Eugene is a prince. Yep, his long-lost dad is the king of the Dark Kingdom, where the Moonstone is being kept. King Edmund convinces Eugene to turn his back on Rapunzel and the gang, meaning he was the one that was going to betray her. Or was he? During the final battle, Rapunzel thinks about what Cass said to her earlier and decides to let her best friend in the room with her and Eugene when she reunites with the Moonstone. But because Rapunzel decides to reach towards the Moonstone as slowly as she possibly could, Cassandra ends up snatching it before she does. Cassandra? What are you doing? I'm fulfilling my destiny! A couple of blue explosions later, and now we have Moon Cassandra. I tried to warn you, Rapunzel. You have to be careful who you trust. Okay, so even though I had checked out of the series at this point when it originally aired in 2019, I still knew about this twist because it came up on my YouTube homepage, but I just felt disappointed at the time, but more at myself because I was like, I knew it, I knew Cassandra was up to something since the beginning. But I was also like, but Cassandra was a great character, why did you make her evil all of a sudden? She doesn't need to be evil. And I mean, she really didn't, which brings us to season 3, the final season, which is really frustrating to talk about because there are so many different ways this storyline could have been done right, but they just decided not to go with any of them. Season 3 immediately answers the question as to where Cassandra was while Rapunzel was in Rapunzeltopia. It turns out that she's Goffel's daughter. Awesome. This is another instance where I found that this happened through YouTube recommendations, and 12-year-old me was just like, really? Okay, I thought we'd moved on from that theory. But basically, in the first 10 minutes of Series 3, this is what happens. We start with a flashback to Cassandra meeting this definitely not evil ghost girl, who shows her a little girl who was living in Mother Goffel's cottage on the night Rapunzel was kidnapped. This little girl is, of course, Cassandra. In case the writers were afraid that Goffel wasn't evil enough, it turns out that she abandoned her own child in order to stay young forever. You're probably wondering, why and how does Goffel have a biological child? That question is never answered, so I decided to create my own lore for this in my Wattpad story, which I'm very, very slowly getting around to writing out on paper. This is where the captain found Cassandra and decided to take her in, and they head back to the kingdom without the lost princess, with a devastated 4-year-old with tears streaming down her cheeks. So Cassandra's upset because her whole life, everything has always been about Rapunzel. Even her own mother chose Rapunzel over her. And so by taking the Moonstone, Cassandra could finally have some power against Rapunzel, and she will never feel cast aside again. Okay? Sounds like a pretty decent villain origin story, right? I can see where she's coming from. Only that's not why she's upset. She's upset at Rapunzel for being kidnapped. Excuse me? Rapunzel was a baby. Anyway, after all this is revealed, Cassandra sings my favourite song of the series, Crossing the Line. Well, I mean, honestly, it's just as good as the other 3 god tier songs in this show, but if I had to pick one gun to my head, I would pick this one. I spent an entire bus ride listening to this one once, and Cassandra runs off into the distance, and shortly after, Ulf the Mime shows up in a hot air balloon and hints that something may be going wrong in Corona. So they all fly back to Corona in about 20 seconds, where they find that Rapunzel's parents' memories have been erased, and the kingdom has been taken over by the Sapporians, a group of fascists led by Cassandra's boyfriend from season 1, who I also forgot to mention, and it turns out that Varian is helping them. Varian, we missed you. Varian and Rapunzel make up. Later in the episode, everyone works together to defeat the Sapporians, and then another one of my problems with season 3 starts. The filler episodes. We have a Eugene and Edmund bonding episode. Then we find out that Red and Angry, who I also forgot to mention, and Red is now a werewolf. There is a time travel episode, a flashback. Rapunzel tries to get her parents to fall in love again, and then the animals have to save Rapunzel, Varian, Red and Angry from a necklace, and then an episode which relates back to the main conflict of the series. Look, I wouldn't mind these filler episodes so much if Cassandra wasn't semi-possessed by a demon while this is happening. Cassandra's villain arc, it's so weird to me because it somehow managed to feel rushed and dragged out at the same time, and I heard somewhere that this season was originally going to be like 37 episodes long. It wasn't, it ended up being 17, but like, were they going to drag it out even more? I just heard somewhere that there was going to be 4 seasons, but I don't know what they would have done with a season 4, but I'm getting ahead of myself. In the episode Be Very Afraid, Cassandra started to feel afraid that she might hurt Rapunzel. The little ghost girl is telling her to destroy Rapunzel, but obviously Cass is like, that's my friend, I don't want to do that. So the spiky black rocks turn bright red, and they start to make everyone's fears come to life with their imagination. This episode is really good because it has a nice message about facing your fears in song form nonetheless, and it also helps us to hold on to the hope that the Cassandra that we know is still in there somewhere. Then Pascal gets the pet dragon. The episode after that, Islands Apart, shows Cassandra's dad is not doing very well. He's gone off to live on that weird tropical island because he feels like he's failed as a father, and it's actually pretty sad. We find out that Cassandra actually confronted the captain, yelling at him for not telling her who her mother was. But I mean, would that have made things any better? But anyway, the captain wished for a second chance, so this totally not sinister, not real child version of Cassandra is living with him. After an army of evil Cassandras come after them, the captain has to make the very difficult choice to renounce his wish. Then the real Cassandra finds out that in order to execute the next part of her plan, she needs to find the missing piece of the scroll, which leads us to Cassandra's revenge. On Eugene's 25th birthday, Rapunzel is planning to propose to him, and it's actually so adorable. Edmund also reveals to Eugene that he's actually 1 year older than he thought, which leads him to have an existential crisis. Cassandra can't let Eugene have anything nice, so she crashes his party and threatens to destroy everything if they don't give her the scroll, which contains an incantation that will allow her to have full control of the rocks. It turns out that the only person who knows this incantation is Varian, whom Cassandra kidnaps and feeds him his own truth serum so that he can tell her the incantation. Cassandra gets control of the rocks and builds up her own tower out of them, which leads to the final god tier song of the series, Nothing Left to Lose. I believe that this was the only time that Jeremy Jordan and Eden Espinosa recorded together. She traps Varian in a cage and leaves him stranded thousands of feet above the ground and goes about her day, sitting on her throne. Varian figures out the 4th and final incantation with the help of the sunlight, and Rapunzel uses the spell to defeat Cassandra. There seems to be a recurring theme in this show where characters fall from very high distances and somehow don't die. Then Cassandra gets another cool weapon, and then she almost makes things right with Rapunzel until Xantiri, who's the little ghost girl by the way, plants a broken mirror in Rapunzel's bag. They do a really good job of making Cass look stupid in these last few episodes. It's honestly a miracle that I still love Cass as much as I do, because despite the fact that Cassandra has threatened the kingdom, imprisoned her father, kidnapped and drugged a minor, and tried to kill her a couple of times, Rapunzel still believes that the Cass she knows and loves is still in there somewhere. Now that is dedication. Flynn Poster is thankfully the last filler-esque episode in the series, and I say filler-esque because the only thing that doesn't make it a filler episode is the fact that the captain steps down from his role as captain and gives the position to Eugene because he understandably doesn't want to fight his own daughter. In Once a Handmaiden, Cassandra realises that Xantiri framed Rapunzel, and so she decides to go and make things right by impersonating another young handmaiden and later performing in a play. Cass is about to reveal her true identity to Rapunzel, but Xantiri goes ahead and ruins everything again. Cass goes insane and starts impersonating her mother. She proceeds to destroy the kingdom, forcing everyone to evacuate, which then leads us to the series finale, Plus c'est en vous. When I tell you I was dangerously close to losing all my respect for Cass in this moment, I think it was confirmed by one of the writers or somewhere that the Moonstone does manipulate emotions, so despite the fact that Cass is in control of her own actions, the Moonstone is contributing to her short temper and manipulative thoughts. Did the writers do a very good job at getting this point across? I don't think so, because I'm certain that Cass would have a much bigger fan base if this was the case. Now we're at the series finale, where the gang heads to Demanatus' lair to find the instructions to build a machine that can send Xantiri back to hell. And then they all turn to monkeys. Yep, that happens. All while Cassandra is still enjoying her new castle. When they eventually get the instructions, the gang heads back to Corona, and while Varian tries to build the machine in the castle, Rapunzel sings a nice song about how she'd give anything to have her best friend back. After the song, Cass finds Rapunzel and two get into a very destructive battle, while Varian, Lance and all the other side characters get lost in another acid trip. Eugene is also trying to recruit his dad and the rest of the Brotherhood to help out with this battle, who are all being mind-controlled by Xantiri. Cassandra manages to strip Rapunzel of the Sundrop itself, which causes Rapunzel's head to turn brown, and Xantiri then snatches the Sundrop, and the Moonstone causes Cassandra to revert back to her old self, and Xantiri then turns into this monstrosity. While Xantiri is outside murdering everyone with a death spell, Rapunzel and Cassandra make up in a scene which I actually think is really sweet.
But that first laugh was so remarkable, because I knew you meant it. What do you mean? When you laugh, I don't know, it was like seeing you, the real you, for the first time. And that's the Cassandra I became best friends with. Even when I look at you now, after all that's happened, no matter what we've done to each other, I still see that look in your eyes.
Cass then finds a small piece of the Moonstone and gives it to Rapunzel, which briefly gives her hair back its power, and then the two work together to get Xantiri to collide the Sundrop with the Moonstone after Rapunzel cuts her hair for the final time, and then explosions, and Xantiri disappears, and oh no, Cass is dead. Oh no, everyone's dead. And I know at first you'll think, this is a kid's show, there's no way they're going to kill the main characters. But then you remember that most of these characters aren't in Tangled Ever After. And yes, you could say that they weren't at the wedding because the characters didn't exist yet. But as someone who cares a lot about continuity, and as a result shows like The Simpsons drive me insane in that sense, I was freaking out at this moment. Rapunzel grabs the Sundrop and the Moonstone and uses its healing incantation one more time to revive everyone. And then the stones are shot back into the sky, right back where they came from. And oh no, Rapunzel's dead, just kidding. The Golden Trio then hug in a moment which mirrors the ending of the movie, and then Cassandra leaves Corona to find her destiny, while Rapunzel takes her place as queen. Then Eugene proposes to Rapunzel and she finally says yes, and they all live happily ever after. One of the most divisive things about this finale within the fandom is how they handled Cassandra's redemption. While Varian's redemption at the start of the season was perfectly executed and made complete sense for the narrative of the season, Cassandra just felt like they remembered that this is the last episode and we have to make her good again. So, they'll just hug and make up, fully ignoring that Cassandra definitely must have passed the point of no return, even by Rapunzel's standards, when she maybe, kidnapped and drugged a minor, then trapped Rapunzel in a cave and tried to kill her with poisonous gas, or when she destroyed the kingdom. And the thing is, I think it would be a lot easier to forgive Cass for all this if, 1, she'd been given different motivations, and 2, they'd made it more clear that she was being influenced by Xantiri and the Moonstone, because we saw from the 2 previous episodes, A Tale of Two Sisters and Once a Handmaiden, that when Cassandra gets away from Xantiri, she's a lot more like the Cass we knew and loved from the first 2 seasons. Secondly, there's the whole debate about whether she should have been allowed to go off and be free after everything she did, especially comparing how Varian, a child, was sent to jail for a year for some pretty bad crimes which were clearly driven by anger and guilt. Meanwhile, Cassandra, a fully grown adult, gets to go off and be free and find her destiny. And here's my opinion on that. The main difference between those 2 situations is that when Varian's incident happened, the king was in charge, and he obviously wasn't too happy about this mad scientist imprisoning his wife. Whereas with Cassandra's incident, Rapunzel was the one in charge, so it made sense that she wouldn't want to have her friend locked up, and also, could you imagine how awkward it would be to just have Cassandra, sitting in a jail cell while being watched by the guards that raised her? So yeah, I can let the writers off on that one. However, a better ending to season 1 would have been Rapunzel saying to her dad, "Wait, Dad, don't lock this insecure 14-year-old self-taught alchemist in jail with a bunch of serial killers. Instead, let's bring him with us on the journey to follow the rocks." Wouldn't that have been so much nicer than being stuck with Shorty for 24 episodes? If I had to change anything about Cassandra's ending, I would probably have added a title card that said something like a few months of community service later or something like that, because it is kind of wild to me that she got no punishment whatsoever after everything that happened. So that's it. That's Tangled the series. Despite its questionable writing at times, I do still love the show very, very much, and I do recommend it. It introduced me to 2 of my favourite Broadway actors, and the music is top notch. Seriously, people should watch the show just for the music. And I would also suggest not thinking too much about the writing, because like I said earlier, the more you think about the storylines in this series, the more missed opportunities that you realise it had. But anyway, Tangled the series concluded on March 1st, 2020, and that is currently the latest canonical entry into the Tangled franchise. Although, it almost didn't have to be. After the series ended, the storyboard artists Caitlin Ritter and Anna Lencioni came up with an idea for a spin-off called Varian and the Seven Kingdoms, where Varian sets off on a journey along with a couple of other alchemists to find the 7 alchemical laws by visiting the 7 kingdoms, a journey in which his mother never came back from. They pitched this idea to Disney, but unfortunately it was never greenlit. Disney was hesitant to create a spin-off series that was directly tied to a spin-off series of one of their properties, And it's clear that at this point that Disney doesn't realise just how big the Tangled fandom is, so it never happened canonically. However, that didn't stop fans of Tangled the series and Varian from making their own versions of Varian and the Seven Kingdoms, and I must say it's actually really impressive the depth that some of these stories have. But it is what it is. It's been 5 years since the last canon entry into the Tangled franchise, so the real question at the moment is, where do we go from here? This part isn't really relevant to the main point of the video, but I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the extent to which Disney has utilised the Tangled franchise in other media. A video game was released alongside the original movie in November 2010, as most Disney movies did back then, and I wish they still did now, even though I doubt any kid would really want to play a video game based on Wish or Strange World. But I mean, an Inside Out 2 game would be nice. Please? I do actually have this game, but I think I've only ever played like one level. I should probably go and try it out again a bit. And if you want to play this game for yourself, then you can probably find it in your nearest entertainment exchange or wherever you get your secondhand video games. Rapunzel is also a playable character in Disney Infinity, rest in peace. Oh, I love Disney Infinity, I wish they would bring it back. I'd love them to have gone through with the Moana playset, but I understand why the Toys to Life games died out. The weird thing is that Rapunzel is a playable character, and I think there were a couple of power discs as well, but Eugene wasn't, and that is criminal. However, Eugene is a playable character along with Rapunzel, Pascal, Maximus and Mother Gothel in a game that I still play regularly, Disney Magic Kingdoms. This is a world-building game set within a Disney theme park, and you get to build so many iconic Disney attractions from the real-life theme parks and from the movies, and there are hundreds of characters to collect. You send characters on missions, and you get collectibles, and then the collectibles help you welcome new characters, and oh my god, this sounds like an ad. I promise this is not a sponsored video, but I do recommend Disney Magic Kingdoms. You can also play with the Tangled characters in Disney Dreamlight Valley and Kingdom Hearts 3. And there's also Ralph Breaks the Internet. Almost forgot about that. As for other merchandise, there's the typical stuff you'd expect from a Disney movie, books, toys, clothes, and a lot of very impressive things on Etsy. But I do find it very interesting the extent to which Tangled is generally marketed by Disney, especially compared to something like Frozen. I mean, Frozen, even to this day, almost 12 years after its release, still has merchandise plastered everywhere in most supermarkets I go to. On t-shirts and on birthday cards and dolls, and yeah, Rapunzel may appear on a card or two, but her and other princesses basically get paid dust in this area compared to Elsa. And of course I get why kids like Elsa. I mean, I was obsessed with Elsa as a kid because she wears a sparkly blue dress and has ice powers, a little girl's dream. But you know who else has the potential to be just as marketable as Elsa with her magical powers and nicely coloured dress and a pet sidekick to go with it? Rapunzel! And it's not just Rapunzel, of course, there's Mulan and Ariel and Tiana, who also deserves so much better from Disney as a whole, but that can be for another day. For now, we're talking about Rapunzel. There is also official Tangled the series merchandise as well, but I'm not too sure about first-hand availability, but they might be on eBay or something, second-hand. I went to the only Disney store left in London, and I couldn't find anything to do with the series. So one day I'll save up and see if I can get my hands on those, because we have a couple of doll sets and plushies, plus this figurine set, which is actually rather uncanny, particularly Cass and Varian, but that's obviously because we've never seen them in 3D. Finally, let's talk about the happiest place on earth. Last summer at Tokyo Disney Sea, Fantasy Springs opened with 3 distinctive lands within the area themed to Frozen, Peter Pan and Tangled. People have been saying for years how Tangled deserves a full-on water dark ride at a Disney theme park, similar to Frozen Ever After at Epcot, and because Tokyo Disney Sea is not directly owned by Disney, the Imagineers can do whatever the hell they want. So that's why they've been able to do all this cool stuff, including a full-on Zootropolis land. But Tangled Land, from what I've seen online, is exactly the type of attraction that we've been asking for years. They have a snuggly duckling restaurant, a tower with a frickin' moving, singing Rapunzel animatronic staring out upon crowds, and best of all, a Tangled-themed water dark ride, Rapunzel's Lantern Festival. I would love to go to Tokyo Disney Sea one day. At least one Disney park is giving Tangled the respect it deserves. And what does it get in Disney World? Bathrooms. Last year, I visited California with my family for the first time, and I'm not joking, Rapunzel had more representation in the 50s diner on the side of the highway than she did in Disneyland. I think that pretty much sums up how Disney as a company feels about this IP. And like I said earlier, it's not just Tangled, there's plenty of underrated Disney movies that could only dream of getting milked half as much as Frozen was, and still currently is. I'm not saying I want another Tangled movie, that would be completely unnecessary. There is enough lore from both the movie and the series combined that could probably fill a 200-page history book in the children's section of Waterstones. Tangled the series did exactly what a sequel should do: expand upon the world of the original and keep people invested. Rapunzel and Eugene lived happily ever after, as far as we're aware, and we really don't need Disney to canonically show us what happens beyond that. My main point with this video is to explain how Disney has presented this IP over the last 15 years, and how I don't think the company realises how special Tangled is to so many people, myself included. And also because a lot of people don't even know that there was a Tangled show. Every now and then, a clip from the show will come up and people in the comments will just be like, there was a Tangled show? Tangled the series, despite receiving mostly positive reviews, never quite found the right audience at the time, and that's one of the main reasons it only had 3 seasons. I feel like if it were to come out nowadays, the response would be quite different, because firstly, it most likely would air on Disney Plus, and would be a lot more heavily promoted on social media compared to it airing Saturday mornings on Disney Channel in 2017 to 2020. One of the reasons I stopped watching when Season 2 originally aired was because of the way the episodes aired. With Season 1, the majority of the season was just a bunch of self-contained episodes within that season. So you could watch Under Wraps at 10 o'clock and then watch The Way of the Willow at 10:30 and you wouldn't be confused by anything. With Season 2, there is quite a distinct chronological order that the season flows in. So you can't watch The Return of Quaid and then watch Curses, because you won't know who the psychic monkey is. I'm bringing this up because obviously when you watch it on Disney Plus, everything is in chronological order, so it's easy to keep track of everything going on. And you know, when it first aired in 2018, I went from the series premiere to the bird episode. I missed 2 whole other episodes of Vardaros and The Forest of No Return. So overall, I do think under different circumstances, Tangled the series could have a much bigger active online fan community. Although I dread to imagine the social media discourse that would have happened during Season 3. But regardless of that, I know that as much as I and the majority of the fandom would love to see Varian and the Seven Kingdoms become a reality, it almost definitely won't happen, at least not while I don't have a say in what does and doesn't get made. Tell you what, if I ever become a producer for the Walt Disney Company, my first priority will be to make Varian and the Seven Kingdoms happen canonically, with Jeremy Jordan still voicing Varian. That, and figuring out what to do with the Muppets, because everyone loves the Muppets. But I do understand Disney's reasons for not greenlighting Varian and the Seven Kingdoms, because making a spin-off is risky enough, and it's a lot more risky to make a spin-off of a spin-off, and I know Young Sheldon did that, but I just don't think Tangled the series had a big enough fandom that Disney would risk making a whole of a show just for this one small fandom. Because, I mean, it's not likely that people will watch a spin-off show about an original side character from a spin-off show of an original Disney movie that they haven't watched. To actually answer the question, where do we go from here? I actually don't know. Last winter, all of our worst nightmares came true. They announced a live-action remake of Tangled. Now, this has been a rumour circulating for months, and several people have been creating fan casts. Most popular, I believe, was to have Sabrina Carpenter as Rapunzel, Catherine Hahn as Gothel, and Mandy Moore and Zachary Levi as Rapunzel's parents. And I love Sabrina Carpenter, and Catherine Hahn, and Mandy Moore. Zachary Levi's a twat, but I'm not going to go into that. And while they mostly would be great choices, my idea for a perfect cast would be nobody, because there should not be a live-action Tangled. I've said it before and I'll say it again, Disney should try remaking some of the movies that didn't work as well, because the majority of the time, by trying to improve upon the already brilliant films, they end up making it worse. However, just 2 months ago, after the horrendous box office performance of Snow White, Disney announced that they were putting all future live-action remakes on hold for the time being. Thank God. It seemed like they were finally learning the lesson. Although, just a couple of days ago, and I'm not sure if this is 100% confirmed, so please don't take my word for it, but they may have resumed production after the financial success of Lilo and Stitch, which I have not watched yet, but I will eventually because I feel the need to make up to the people who very rightfully criticised the video I made in February, crashing the marketing / lack of a proper trailer for the movie at the time. I don't know if Lilo and Stitch is good or not. I've heard very mixed things about it, so I'll have to wait and see so I can form an objective opinion about whether this could potentially be a step in the right direction for Disney. But regardless of what anyone thinks of live-action remakes as films on their own, I think we can all collectively agree that there is no valid reason for them to exist, other than money. They can be good, and they can be bad, but they all never needed to exist. And whether or not this Tangled live-action actually does happen, I will be happily enjoying the underrated goldmine that is the already existing animated Disney Tangled franchise. Before I finish off, I will just give my opinion on what I think Disney should do going forward to expand upon the Tangled franchise, while not milking it similar to Frozen and Toy Story, because I don't want any more movies. I think the state of Rapunzel and Eugene's story is satisfactory the way it currently is. Also, imagine the budget that would come with making a 3D animated Tangled 2. It would probably be more insane than the budget the original had. But purely for the sake of my own curiosity, I would like to see Tangled Toons. Remember when Toy Story 3 was the last Toy Story movie? Yeah, me neither. But I did enjoy those 3 Toy Story Toons they did, and who can forget the classic Toy Story of Terror and Toy Story That Time Forgot. Classics. I think shorts and TV specials would be perfect for Tangled. 1, because I really want to see what Caspian and Lance look like in 3D, and 2, considering how good the animation quality was back then, I would love to see how the Tangled universe looks with 2025 animation software. So that's my proposal for Disney. Nothing too grand, just a couple of 3D animated shorts within the Tangled universe. They can be set whenever. Just show us what the original characters for the series look like in 3D. Please? Like, just a frame at least? But if they really are making a live action film, I know that most likely means that the animated Tangled franchise is over for good. And until I hopefully become a producer for Disney at some point in my filmmaking career, we have to deal with what we currently have. You can stream all events from the canon Disney Tangled franchise that I have discussed today on Disney Plus, along with Tangled shortcuts, which I forgot to mention. These are kind of like Tangled Toons, and they're pretty funny too. They are just 2-minute diary entries essentially about minor events in the characters' lives during the first season, such as hiccups and stuff like that. And if you don't have Disney Plus, then you can watch the entire first season of Tangled the series and Tangled shortcuts on YouTube for free, along with most of the incredible songs from throughout the series. Again, my 4 favourites are Ready As I'll Ever Be, Waiting in the Wings, Crossing the Line, and Nothing Left to Lose. On that topic, I do find it really funny that out of everything Tangled the series related posted officially by Disney Channel on YouTube, this one short where Rapunzel gives Eugene a bad haircut has 68 million views. Where did that come from? Most of these clips range from 1 to 10 million if they're lucky. I mean, this short is hilarious, but out of everything, where did the 68 million come from? So yeah, there we have it. The future of Disney's Tangled franchise remains uncertain. My recommendation is to watch the movie, watch the series, watch those 2 scenes out of Ralph Breaks the Internet, and what happens to the characters beyond what we've already been given is completely up to you. You can find plenty of fanfiction on Wattpad and AO3 put together by people who are passionate about this franchise, and I think supporting unknown authors and artists is a really amazing thing to do. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. What do you think of the Tangled franchise? Have you watched Tangled the series? And if you have, then please let me know what your favourite song is, or how you would have rewritten season 3, or both. And finally, if they have to do a live action Tangled, which they don't, who would you like to see play Rapunzel? Thank you for watching. I hope to see you later. You know, the funny thing is, there was also a rumour going around a few months ago that Disney was working on a live action Mother Gothel movie, either instead of or alongside the live action remake, and I'm not sure how true this is, but I just think it's funny because during a video I did last year, I actually pitched an idea for a Cruella-style revamp story for Mother Gothel that I made up as I went along, and I was actually thinking more about that idea after I posted the video, but then I watched Tangled Season 3 and I saw what she did to baby Cass, and I was like, no, this bitch does not deserve a redemption movie. Not on my watch. Are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? Well, in Gothel's case, she was born wicked, and she'll always be an irredeemable monster. No doubt about it.